Often people use the tarot to find worldly success, material success. And so they would be delighted to get the King of Pentacles because what better represents material wealth? However, material wealth, especially around money, is a trap, in my opinion. Similar to, unfortunately, to most romantic relationships, is a trap too. It's Maya telling you that you can escape, or rather the subconscious telling you that you can escape the law of impermanence and you can enjoy what you had in the womb by simply getting money or getting that other person who will always love you. And as we know, often that doesn't work out. Or money doesn't buy you love, or you may have a love of a person, but you're finding them annoying, or your life is falling apart in other ways. That's just life, you know. To say that life isn't suffering would be to tell Buddha that he didn't know what he was talking about. So, today we're just pulling one card, and I'm going to do a longer explanation in part 2 of this talk. But part 1, the question was today, what empowers me to soften the trial? That is the trial day summer, where you're making this moment about this moment, but typically we're not. We're in the past, future, and image. Using thank to appreciate not knowing, to address polarization and reveal shadow mask. So that to me is material wealth, is to appreciate not knowing. Because if you think you know, whether it's about money, relationship, your job, anything else, if you think you know, whether you like it or don't like it, whatever you know, or your image, whether you like it or don't like it, what you know, you're attached. And if you think that you need to know, you're also attached. But if you appreciate not knowing, whether it's about the image, the job, what someone's saying to you, relationship, money, whatever's coming up, then you're more likely to make this moment about this moment, because you're not trying to figure things out or trying to disprove or prove something. Anything you think you know is a polarization, negative adaptive child, negative free child. Sphere 7, Sphere 8. We'll talk about that in part 2. So with the King of Pentacles, we are aware that we can have mastery over this and just continually, even if we fail, appreciate not knowing, accept not knowing. And then, what I didn't talk about in this reading, but is super important, is unconditional self-acceptance, USA, unconditional positive self-regard. And frankly, I was just rushing. And that's often the situation. We're rushing, so we think, well, I'll just get conditional love, or I'll try to deny or deal with this negative self-impression. And of course, unconditional self-love, in many of my talks, I talk about it as being the most important, and definitely we should make time for it. But I didn't, and that's fine. I can have unconditional self-acceptance about my failure to make unconditional self-acceptance part of this reading and part of my priorities. And maybe we'll do that tomorrow to make up for it. Today is a Thursday, so we can associate Thursday with truth and the masculine, and orange and spiral dynamics and this yang energy. And so then Friday, maybe we'll do this reading, if we remember, to be about just unconditional self-acceptance, to create balance, and maybe we'll get lucky and get the Queen of Pentacles. Okay, thank you very much. Now for part 2. Hard to hear things, particularly if we have this fantasy around soulmates or material wealth being our rescue. And if you've had a glimpse or a suggestion or an idea that material wealth won't solve all your problems, or finding your soulmate won't find all your problems, maybe there's no such thing as a soulmate. The stress of finding material wealth and the stress of finding a soulmate can move us into a great amount of friction and tension in the trial. And in the first talk, I related Thursday to the idea of Jupiter, of truth. And I didn't talk about Friday very much. Friday associated with Venus and love. Truth and love. Expression, expressivity, and receptivity. This is the dance of the yin and the yang. And because of the desire to be safe and to feel loved, we can seek material success, to be the King of Pentacles, and try to ignore the law of impermanence, or say that the law of impermanence is bad.
decay, loss. We don't like any of those things. And yet an ecosystem can't survive without loss. And an ego can thrive if it can deny loss. So by the law of impermanence, by the fact that the romances fail, the fact that the money goes away, or the fact that the romance and the money doesn't falter, but you're still unhappy, this all sounds like bad news to us because we chase the delusion. But it's actually good news because we're here to escape or transcend or give love to while leaving the delusion, the ego. The ego wants there to be no law of impermanence, or have it only affect other people that it doesn't like. The ego wants you to have a permanent economic security, and so building wealth is a way to perpetuate that belief that somehow you're not going to die. And it wants to make up for the loss of the love of the mother. And that may have happened as soon as you left the womb, or it may have happened as soon as you were put in the crib, or it may have happened as soon as adolescence began. Maybe if you're lucky, you never lost the love of the mother, but most people, at some point, there's a disappointment. That's the dynamic masculine rebellion at the very least. And then you turn to the static masculine, some kind of structure, and it just didn't satisfy. It just didn't make you feel whole. If you're lucky and you transcend and include it, and my latest idea for that is you create a non-profit enterprise, doesn't have to be official, but some kind of initiative that has static masculine structures, but is playful. And then you move into the dynamic feminine to prepare for the return to the static feminine. And I want to apologize for speaking so quickly. It's just that I don't have a lot of time for these talks. I wish that I did. And maybe someday I will. I could admit that. My life isn't ideal because I'd like to really take more time, at least to extend my vowels. And maybe I can spare more time than I realize. So anyway, I hope you enjoy part 1. And as I said, feel free to dismiss part 2. And there'll be another part, probably a separate talk, obviously. But that is going to be linking Venus, beauty, and looking at unconditional self-acceptance, unconditional positive self-regard as a way to make this moment about this moment. To me, material wealth is making this moment about this moment. It's not about money, it's not about sex, it's not about romance, it's not about feeling good about yourself. It's simply about being receptive, this yin aspect in this moment. And that's the reason we crave money and crave sex and romance, is so that we can finally have the conditions met that the mind has been demanding so we can be in this moment. But it's a trap because the mind doesn't want to be satisfied. It wants to be in conflict because the mind is split. The mind is negative adaptive child sphere 8 tamasic energy, negative free child sphere 7 rajasic energy. That's both influencing sphere 9. And if we have balance, then we have positive adaptive child and positive free child, both playing in the imagination to manifest in this world. And through a non-profit that's done playfully, or some kind of active service that's formalized in a group, that's a chance to play it out because the stakes are lower. You're not relying on it to pay the rent. In fact, all the money to raise should just go back to the cause. It shouldn't go into your pocket. And then it can be an enterprise which is about the movement from static masculine to dynamic feminine, if you want to play that game.
I want to talk about shadow and light, delusion, and a bucket of ice water thrown in your face. And there's 3 areas I want to talk about that in. First is the area of the Enneagram. Second is the area of fame. And third is the area of falling in love. But I'm not going to do it in that order. I'll do it in reverse order. So falling in love, the desire is to return back to that pre-Oedipal state of union, where you just care for the person and the person cares for you, and there's no problems. But this can lead people to overly romanticize, especially long-distance relationships or pen pal relationships, although pen pals are less likely now. But when you don't have all the facts, you fill in the details with only idealized things. And even though it can cause suffering and insomnia, you don't want to lose the illusion. If someone throws that bucket of cold water and says, well, that other person really isn't everything you think they are, your suffering and your imbalance will be gone, but you kind of wanted to have that suffering because it also allowed you to perpetuate that myth that there was that soulmate or that perfect person there for you. I'm not taking a stand for or against soulmates, but I am saying that the belief in soulmates causes suffering. And so whoever throws that cold water on you, whether it's a relative, a friend, a stranger, your own mind, or the person then reveals that they're not perfect, you're going to be angry, upset, and withdraw, because even though you had the pain, you wanted the idealization. Now, with famous people, or even when you're just posting on Facebook and getting attention, just for a moment, you may want to become famous or post and get attention so that you seem important and significant. And I've seen people who get so stressed out and or so excited when they get lots of attention. And this will cause two things to happen. One is they'll believe the identity is real and be attached to it. And heaven forbid their popularity fades, right? That's why you see these YouTubers get so obsessed and even kill themselves. And you see people who lose fame and attention get more desperate or get depressed. It's natural. We want to be valued. So the irony is that you get valued, you get famous, but then, and I've spoken to semi-famous people, and they talk about how they just get lots of haters all the time. And so they did it to get the positive attention, and they get it. But if 10% or 5% or even 1% are negative attention, then they don't really get the enjoyment that they were hoping for. Similar to the infatuation or love situation I mentioned. How does this fit into the Enneagram? Phase 1 of the Enneagram, when people get interested, is what type am I? And you'll see this obsesses the online boards about it and the retreats, and that's what people are spending their time doing. What type am I? What type am I? And I'm not saying it's wrong, but those of us who have already figured out what type we are really want to focus on, how do I accept the type that I am? Because there's a secret wish. If you really understand the Enneagram and how limiting the fixation of your type is, there's a wish to no longer be that type. You don't really have another type that's better, but you just don't want to be that type. You don't want to be any type. And you meet people who don't seem to fit any type, and you're like, oh, maybe it's possible. Maybe there's somebody. Maybe I could be somebody who's not a type. Maybe I'm not really this type. On a deeper level, you're all the types. You're just choosing one fixation as the most common one, and that's the type that you're labeled with. It's not who you are, and that's the challenge with all this obsession over what type am I, is that we're forgetting that type isn't who you are. Just like the fame isn't who you are, just like the infatuation isn't who you are. But the mind so much wants to be something, even if it's negative, or even if there's a mixed quality to it. So in Taoism, the white separate. The white is seen often in conversations about Taoism. The white is often seen as positive, yang, and the blue in the tarot, and the black is seen as negative, female. And as I've been speaking about many times, the black is the receptivity, the night. And the white is the day. That's the expression. I don't have to attach them to gender stereotypes, but you see they are present even sexually. They're there. So, but there's another way to look at it also, is that psychologically it's totally different, right? So the double yin lines, which we associate with winter and night, also can be associated with subconscious. And so I would say that there's the negative adaptive child and negative free child in the subconscious. And both want to be in charge. So the negative adaptive child may say, we need to make a commitment to this person, romantically, economically, financially, with our work, and then they will love us. That's the deal of the negative adaptive child. That's the tamasic energy suppressing the rajasic energy to be conquering and independent. The negative adaptive child suppressing the negative free child, the sphere 8 suppressing the sphere 7. They're battling in the imagination, sphere 9, for what manifests. So at the dawn, spring, one of them is starting to push through from the bottom, take over. So you find that girl, you take that job, whatever the Sphere 8 association where you limit your freedom happens. And then the negative free child, the Rajasic energy, may say, well, yeah, but I'll get these benefits out of it. It's trying to accommodate it. And the fact of the matter is there's a split because it really doesn't want that. And then in the association, in the day trial, both are saying, well, I'm not really feeling relaxed. This is not what I signed up for. Even during the love phase, or during the fame first influx, you feel it. But over time, the fame becomes problematic because you have haters. The love fades because the person is not the ideal that you saw. It's not the pre-Oedipal bond that you were signing up for. And so then at the return, the fall, when the yin is pushing back, when the subconscious is pushing back, that's a time for the part that lost to start to point fingers, or both sides start pointing fingers and say, look, this wasn't what we promised. This is a mistake. All we can do is laugh at this. Because if we try to associate with either polarity, it's problematic. I say laugh, we could say love, give love and acceptance to them. That's where we appreciate not knowing and thank. If you don't appreciate not knowing, then one of the sides is going to conquer the other. Negative adaptive child, negative free child, Sphere 8, Sphere 7, they're going to take control. But if you accept and appreciate not knowing, then maybe they can just lay back and not be so sure. Or they'll make their suggestions, but you won't be attached to them. And then you're able to make this moment not this moment, not some ego agenda, where the fantasy is being disrupted. And you don't have to be rebellious, you don't have to be aggressive, you don't have to have an attitude, you don't have to be attached to either sphere polarization, to the limits or the purpose, spheres 5 and 4. And then you can move into final phase of unconditional self-acceptance, unconditional positive self-regard. Yes, I got polarized. Yes, I needed certainty, or I thought I had certainty. I needed to know, or I thought I knew. And it caused some imbalance, some excessive negative free child, rajas, or excessive negative adaptive child, tamas, excessive sphere 8 or excessive sphere 9. Now the tamas and rajas is a little bit looser because you can have tamas and sattva together, so it's positive adaptive child, and you can have rajas and sattva together, and that's positive free child. And sometimes you may act out, be a little mischievous, reveal too much truth to someone, especially if you're doing the tarot, and it could be positive. It doesn't have to be negative free child. And sometimes you can adapt, hold things back, or pledge loyalty, or put your own needs aside. It can be positive adaptive child. That's what makes life on earth so confusing. Good luck.